there is a city whose very name stirs the soul, conjures visions of prophets, empires, and crusaders. Jerusalem, a city sacred to more than half the people on earth, a place where faith, power, and conflict have collided for nearly 5,000 years. But how did this patch of stony hills, nestled between desert and sea, become the most contested city in history? How did Jerusalem become a beacon of hope, a symbol of sorrow, and the epicenter of three great world religions? Let's journey through the centuries and discover how Jerusalem shaped and was shaped by the world. Long before it was called Jerusalem, this land was home to ancient peoples, seeking survival among the limestone ridges and springs. Archaeology tells us the first permanent settlements emerged near the Gihon Spring, one of the area's rare sources of fresh water, around 3,500 BCE. This early community, known to the Egyptians as Rushalimum or Urusalim, was just one of many small fortified towns across Canaan. Over centuries, it grew into a hilltop fortress, trading with Egypt and Mesopotamia, standing guard over the trade routes that connected Africa, Asia, and Europe. The city's name itself, Salem or Shalem, likely refers to an ancient Canaanite god of dusk and peace, a fitting irony given Jerusalem's future. As the Bronze Age flourished, so did Jerusalem. By 1800 BCE, the city was protected by massive stone walls and ruled by a local king, known as a Shazan. Jerusalem's strategic location ensured it was often under the watchful eye of Egypt, whose pharaohs demanded tribute from Canaanite rulers. Egyptian records mention Urusalim as early as the 19th century BCE. Clay tablets from the 14th century BCE Amarna archive reveal desperate local kings appealing to Egypt for help against raiders. The first written evidence of Jerusalem's place in international affairs. For nearly 1,000 years, Jerusalem remained a city-state, sometimes independent, sometimes a vassal, often caught between mighty empires: Egyptian, Hittite, Assyrian, and Babylonian. According to Hebrew tradition, the true transformation came around 1000 BCE, when King David captured Jerusalem from the Jebusites. Rather than destroying the city, David made it his capital, uniting the tribes of Israel. This political masterstroke set the stage for his son Solomon to build the first temple, a vast golden sanctuary that became the spiritual heart of Judaism. Solomon's Jerusalem was a place of legend, bustling markets, chariots, incense-laden processions, and a rising skyline of palaces and temples. The city became a magnet for pilgrims, scholars, and traders, but it was also a target. After Solomon's reign, the kingdom split, Israel in the north, Judah in the south. Jerusalem, capital of Judah, faced centuries of threat from Assyrians, Egyptians, and Babylonians. The Assyrian Empire swept through the north in 722 BCE, destroying Israel. Judah held out for a time, but in 586 BCE, the Babylonian king Nebuchadnezzar II besieged Jerusalem, razed Solomon's temple, and exiled the Jewish elite to Babylon. This catastrophe became a defining trauma for the Jewish people, the first diaspora. Yet from Babylon, the exiles remembered Jerusalem, vowing, "If I forget you, O Jerusalem, let my right hand forget its skill." When the Persians, led by Cyrus the Great, conquered Babylon in 539 BCE, they allowed the Jews to return. Jerusalem was rebuilt. The Second Temple rose atop the ruins, beginning a new era as the spiritual and administrative center of Judea. Over the next centuries, Jerusalem was ruled by Persians, then Greeks after Alexander the Great's conquest, and later Egyptians. During the 2nd century BCE, a Seleucid king tried to force Hellenistic culture and pagan worship on the city. The result was the Maccabean Revolt, one of the most successful Jewish uprisings in history. The rededication of the temple is celebrated every year as Hanukkah. By 63 BCE, Roman power reached Jerusalem. Pompey the Great entered the city after a siege, and Jerusalem became part of the Roman world. The puppet king, Herod the Great, famed for his ruthlessness and vision, ruled Jerusalem from 37 to 4 BCE. Herod rebuilt the Second Temple on a grand scale, expanded the city's walls, constructed palaces and fortresses, and made Jerusalem one of the marvels of the ancient world. It was in this Roman Jerusalem that Jesus of Nazareth preached, was crucified, and, according to Christian belief, resurrected. For Christians, Jerusalem became the Mother Church, the site of Pentecost, the Last Supper, and the resurrection. Early Christians were persecuted by both Romans and local authorities, but over centuries, Christianity would grow from an underground sect to the empire's dominant faith. Jerusalem's fate darkened again in 70 CE, when Jewish rebels rose against Roman rule. After a brutal siege, Titus, son of Emperor Vespasian, captured Jerusalem. The Second Temple was destroyed. Its surviving outer wall, the Western Wall, is now the holiest site in Judaism. A second revolt, in 132 to 135 CE, the Bar Kokhba revolt, ended in disaster. Romans rebuilt the city as Aelia Capitolina, banned Jews from entering, and erected pagan temples on Jewish holy sites. Jerusalem was now a Roman colony with a largely pagan and Christian population. As Christianity spread, the Roman Empire became Christian under Constantine the Great in the 4th century CE. His mother, Helena, made a pilgrimage to Jerusalem and identified sites linked to Jesus, including Calvary and the empty tomb. The Church of the Holy Sepulchre was built, making Jerusalem a magnet for Christian pilgrims. The city grew, but also witnessed fierce theological debates, schisms, and occasional violence among Christian factions. In 638 CE, a new power arrived. Muslim armies under Caliph Umar entered Jerusalem peacefully. Muslims revered the city as the site of the Prophet Muhammad's night journey, and soon the Dome of the Rock and the Al-Aqsa Mosque graced the Temple Mount. For centuries, Jerusalem was administered by a succession of Islamic dynasties, Umayyads, Abbasids, Fatimids, and others, usually allowing Jews and Christians to live and worship. The city was now sacred to 3 faiths: Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, each with deep historical and spiritual ties. The 11th century brought chaos. Reports of Christian pilgrims being harassed, combined with the call from Pope Urban II, sparked the First Crusade. In 1099, European crusaders stormed Jerusalem in a bloodbath, slaughtering Muslim and Jewish residents and establishing a Christian kingdom. The Church of the Holy Sepulchre was rebuilt in a Romanesque style. The Dome of the Rock and Al-Aqsa Mosque were converted for Christian use. But the Crusaders' rule was always tenuous. In 1187, the great Muslim general Saladin recaptured Jerusalem after the Battle of Hattin, allowing Christian worship but restoring Muslim control. The city became a prize in a long struggle between Crusader states and Muslim dynasties, passing between hands several more times. By the late 13th century, the Egyptian Mamluk sultans took control, rebuilding the city's defences and revitalizing religious life. In 1517, the Ottoman Turks, led by Sultan Suleiman the Magnificent, conquered Jerusalem. Suleiman rebuilt the city walls, restored holy sites, and encouraged Jews, Christians, and Muslims to live and worship in relative peace. For centuries, Ottoman Jerusalem was a sleepy provincial town, divided into 4 quarters: Jewish, Christian, Muslim, and Armenian. Life was hard, and the city's population dwindled, but pilgrims from around the world continued to visit the shrines and sacred places. The 19th century brought dramatic change. As the Ottoman Empire weakened, European powers competed for influence. Russia, France, and Britain opened consulates, built churches and hospitals, and vied for control of Christian holy places. At the same time, Jewish communities in Europe, facing rising persecution, began to return in growing numbers, settling in and around Jerusalem. New neighborhoods sprang up outside the old city walls, and the city's population soared. The era also saw new archaeological digs, revealing lost layers of Jerusalem's ancient past. The discovery of the Dead Sea Scrolls in the 20th century would further deepen the city's global fascination. During World War I, British forces under General Allenby captured Jerusalem from the Ottomans in 1917. Britain ruled the city as part of the Mandate of Palestine, promising both Arabs and Jews self-determination, promises that would prove impossible to reconcile. As the 20th century unfolded, conflict between Jewish and Arab communities intensified. The Holocaust in Europe drove hundreds of thousands of Jewish refugees to Palestine, deepening tensions. In 1947, the United Nations voted to partition Palestine into separate Jewish and Arab states, with Jerusalem under international control. But war erupted. In 1948, Israel declared independence, and fierce fighting divided Jerusalem. Israel controlled the west, Jordan held the east, including the Old City and holy sites. In June 1967, during the Six-Day War, Israel captured East Jerusalem and reunited the city under Israeli rule for the first time in nearly 2,000 years. Jews returned to pray at the Western Wall. Israel declared Jerusalem its eternal, undivided capital. But for Palestinians, Muslims and Christians alike, East Jerusalem remains the heart of their future state. The city is a flashpoint of nationalist, religious, and political passions. Internationally, most nations have not recognized Israeli sovereignty over the entire city. The United States moved its embassy to Jerusalem in 2018, further polarizing debate. In the 21st century, Jerusalem's population has exploded, now home to over 900,000 people, Jews, Muslims, Christians, and others. Modern Jerusalem is a place of astonishing contrasts. High-tech business parks and ancient olive groves, ultra-Orthodox Jews praying at the Western Wall, Muslims gathering for Friday prayers at Al-Aqsa, Christian pilgrims walking the Via Dolorosa. The old city's labyrinthine alleys are divided by faith, but alive with the sounds and smells of a dozen cultures. Conflicts occasionally flare over access to holy sites, new construction, or religious festivals. But so does hope, in the friendships, schools, and businesses that span divides. From archaeology to literature, Jerusalem is a wellspring of stories. Writers from Mark Twain to Amos Oz have been captivated by its power. Why does Jerusalem matter? It is more than the sum of its wars and wonders. Jerusalem is a living symbol of humanity's longing for meaning, for connection, and for peace. It is a city that has endured, been rebuilt, and continues to inspire hope and awe across every generation. As the city steps into the future, the world still looks to Jerusalem, praying perhaps that one day the city of peace may finally live up to its name. Thank you for joining us on this epic journey through Jerusalem's history. If you enjoyed this story, subscribe for more deep dives into the places and events that shaped our world. Share your thoughts below. What does Jerusalem mean to you? What part of its history fascinates you most? Let's keep the conversation going.